The first part of stage one of AGL's three-stage plan has actually been financially committed to by the company. And bearing that in mind, there will be an 850 megawatt gap in dispatchable power if Liddell was to close in 2022 and no additional dispatchable power was to come into the market, either from AGL investments or other market participants. This is clearly an unacceptable situation, Kieran, and gives rise to a heightened risk of blackouts.
But AGL makes the point that it's 5 years until the closure of that particular power plant. Therefore, business decisions need to be made closer to the time, depending on movements in energy markets and competitors and that sort of thing.
Well, as the government and as the independent energy market operator, you can't leave these issues to chance. What you need to do is to plan and to prepare for the future, and there are long lead times when it comes to investments in the energy market, and 2022 is not that far away. This is not an issue, as Bill Shorten says, for down the track. We need to accept the advice of the independent energy market operator, not dismiss it, as Mark Butler had previously done. And the Australian Energy Market Operator, an independent body, has sent a very powerful message that with Liddell's proposed closure, the National Energy Guarantee is absolutely needed to ensure stability and reliability in our system.
And would that NEG, the National Energy Guarantee, be enough to require AGL, for example, in this specific case, with warnings of 200,000 homes facing blackouts over coming years, would the NEG be enough to require AGL to fill the gap, to fill the void left by the closure of Liddell?
Well, the Energy Market Operator says that the National Energy Guarantee is designed to solve exactly these types of problems. And let's bear in mind that the National Energy Guarantee has a specific requirement that the retailers have to provide sufficient dispatchable power. Dispatchable power is power on demand, not when the wind blows or the sun shines, but it can be coal, it can be gas, it can be hydropower, it can be biomass, it can be pumped hydro storage, and it can be batteries. And we do need more dispatchable power in the system. That's the lesson learnt from South Australia, where they took more wind and solar without sufficient backup and storage, and that's what the Australian Energy Market Operator is telling us about the proposed closure of Liddell.
Now, the regulator also wants, with that 850 megawatt gap that you referred to in relation to the closure of Liddell, that Audrey Zibelman from the AEMO says that you should allow that to be a competitive process. Who fills that gap? It shouldn't necessarily just be AGL that is the company that is going to provide that supply. What's your view on that? Are you open to that recommendation?
Well, the first point is that AGL themselves have said they've got a three-stage plan to replace Liddell, bearing in mind that Liddell is 1,800 megawatts of capacity, supplies more than 10% of New South Wales energy needs, including more than 1 million homes, and supporting big industrial users like the Tomago aluminium smelter. So it's absolutely critical to the stability of New South Wales and the national electricity market. Now, we believe it would be preferable for AGL to financially commit to the other stages of its plan. The only part it has financially committed to is a 100 megawatt upgrade of its Bayswater plan. And this comes clearly
and if it doesn't?
This comes clearly through the report from AEMO. At the same time, Kieran, we would also want other market participants to invest in dispatchable power. This is absolutely critical that we get AGL and other market participants putting investments in the right type of generation, the right type of backup and storage in the market.
So you're not relying on AGL alone. With the National Energy Guarantee, if it's not secured by the end of the year, the Energy Market Operator is saying there needs to be some other mechanism to do that job, but there is no other mechanism. This is the only show in town, as you've put it before, isn't it?
Well, as the energy market operator makes clear in their report, in their advice to government, the preference is for the National Energy Guarantee to be agreed to by the Commonwealth, by the states and by the territories. This is now a clarion call to the Labor Party at a federal level and to Labor states and territories. Get behind the National Energy Guarantee, the stability and the affordability of Australia's energy.
Are the energy companies supporting you on this, though? Because the suggestion is that they don't like the restrictive nature of it. That's the suggestion that's being made.
I spoke last night to the head of AGL, Andy Vesey. I've spoken to the other energy company CEOs. They see the benefits that would come from a national energy policy under the National Energy Guarantee.
Finally, on to the issue of company tax cuts. A number of these companies that you deal with regularly, Origin Energy, Energy Australia, Woodside, they've signed that letter in support of the company tax cuts, but the critics of those tax cuts point to those companies and others having not paid tax in recent financial years. Therefore, the argument goes, therefore they don't have a leg to stand on in terms of then calling for a greater corporate tax relief. What's your response in relation to that? I know the economic arguments around this, but as the minister that deals with these energy companies that have been listed, in that context, what's your view on it?
Well, as you know, this is an argument that was put by Emma Alberici in her ABC report, and that didn't stand up to the light of day. So we are of the view that the companies that have obligations to pay their tax are any companies that seek to shirk those responsibilities. We will come down hard on, as we have. It was the coalition that put in place the new regime around multinational tax avoidance and stronger penalties for that. So only the coalition is taking a firm hand when it comes to ensuring these major companies, regardless of the sector that they operate in, pay their fair share of tax. But at the same time, we need to reduce our company tax rate because we need to remain competitive. Business is not sentimental, capital is mobile, and while the United States, the United Kingdom, our other countries in Asia reduce their company tax rate, so do we to attract the investment that we need.
Do you think that that is as relevant in terms of course, because as you mentioned earlier, investment is over. It's not immediate in terms of its the outlook. It's over many years. Therefore, the investment environment plays a part in that, including the corporate tax rate. But do you feel that that is relevant to the energy sector as well? Is that your view?
Well, of course, regardless of the sector, having a competitive tax regime is important to attracting investment and jobs. We've seen record investment, record job growth across the country under the coalition government. We'll continue to see that if we have in place measures like a competitive company tax regime, which the coalition is determined to implement, and obviously those negotiations with the crossbenchers are going on at present.
Josh Frydenberg, the Energy Minister, speaking to me earlier this morning. Let's get Brooke Cordy with us now. Brooke, with the rest